Let's be honest with each other for a moment. Have you ever woken up the next morning, picked up your phone, and realized you'd been scrolling TikTok until 2 a.m., even though you swore you'd be asleep by 11? Or maybe you finished an entire bag of chips in front of Netflix, despite the healthy eating plan you made at the start of the week. That's not weakness. That's design. We live in an age where everything around us has been optimized to make sure you cannot stop. Social media, fast food, endless entertainment, all of it engineered by the brightest minds in the world with one single goal: keep you for one more minute, then one more, then one more after that. And we lose. Not because we're stupid, not because we lack willpower, but because we're fighting 21st century weapons with a brain wired in the Stone Age, a brain that will always choose the immediate reward over the long-term good. But there was someone who understood this nearly 2,000 years ago, not a psychologist, not a tech expert. A Greek slave named Epictetus, a man who was born without freedom, yet became the freest man history has ever known. Before we talk about the solution, I want you to understand why bad habits are so hard to break. The Stoics called desire epithumia, a powerful pull toward some pleasure promised in the future. It's what drives you to open the fridge at 11 p.m., even though you're not hungry. It's what makes your fingers automatically open Instagram 30 seconds after you just put your phone down. And when you give in to that epithumia, you experience hēdonē, pleasure. But here's what nobody tells you. That pleasure is almost always shorter and emptier than you imagined. You finish the bag of chips, and 10 minutes later, the satisfaction is gone. You watch 30 TikTok videos and can't remember a single one. You buy the thing you wanted and feel hollow. Then comes the regret. Then the promise. Then you start all over again. This isn't anyone's unique story. I lived inside that loop for years, with coffee, with social media, with meaningless late nights that stole hours I'll never get back. Every morning I woke up carrying guilt. Every evening I made another promise to myself. And then, without fail, I broke it. Modern psychology calls this the habit loop, a cycle of cue, routine, and reward. But what Epictetus taught goes far deeper than that. He wasn't just describing the mechanism, he was showing us the way out. Step 1. The art of the pause. Epictetus said, "If you are struck by the appearance of any promised pleasure, guard yourself against being hurried away by it, but let the affair wait your leisure, and procure yourself some delay." Simple enough, but this is the deepest insight about habits I have ever come across. When most of us face temptation, we do one of two things. We give in, or we try to suppress it. Both are wrong. Giving in, that one's obvious. But suppression doesn't work either. Because the moment you try not to think about something, you think about it even more. This is what psychologists call the white bear problem. Tell someone not to think about a white bear, and that's the first thing that appears in their mind. Epictetus offers a third path: observation. Not giving in, not pushing it down, just stopping and watching. This is actually the foundation of vipassana meditation, one of the oldest contemplative traditions ever recorded. You observe the sensation without judgment, without reaction. And something remarkable happens. Most cravings, if you simply refuse to feed them, will peak within 90 seconds and then begin to fade. 90 seconds, that's all you have to survive. I remember one afternoon, sitting at my desk, when the urge to open YouTube hit hard. Instead of giving in or forcing myself to focus, I just sat with it. I watched it the way you watch a wave rising, cresting, then pulling back into the sea, and when it pulled back, the urge was gone. That pause is everything. The moment you create that space between the craving and the action, you still have a choice. The moment you act without pausing, the choice is gone. All that's left is the consequence. Step 2. Look into the future, both sides of it. Epictetus continued, bring to your mind both points of time, that in which you will enjoy the pleasure, and that in which you will repent and reproach yourself after you have enjoyed it. Many people have tried this technique. Many have decided it doesn't work, and honestly I understand why. When desire is at its peak, your brain is not operating normally. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term thinking and impulse control, gets partially drowned out by the limbic system, which is screaming for its reward right now. This isn't a metaphor, this is actual biology. So when you try to remind yourself of the consequences, your brain starts negotiating. It won't be that bad this time, just once. I deserve to relax. But Epictetus didn't stop at visualizing the negative. He added something that most people completely miss, visualizing the joy of victory. Set before you, in opposition to these, how you will be glad and applaud yourself if you abstain. This is where I think Epictetus was truly a genius. We tend to think of pleasure as something you add a good meal, a shopping trip, a night out. But there is a kind of pleasure we almost never talk about, the pleasure of not consuming. The feeling of waking up the next morning knowing you didn't scroll your phone until midnight. The feeling of looking in the mirror and seeing someone who kept their word to themselves. That quiet, private pride of knowing you chose the better version of who you are. That kind of pleasure doesn't last 10 minutes and disappear. It stays with you all day. I want to be honest with you about something. The visualization technique doesn't always work for me. There are nights when I know exactly how exhausted I'll feel in the morning, when I know I'll regret it, and I still pick up my phone and scroll until 1 a.m. There are moments when I've already run through every consequence in my head, and I give in anyway. And that's okay. Epictetus never promised you a perfect formula. He never said you would win every time. What he said was this: every time you pause, even for just 1 second, you are building something more important than a habit. You are building the capacity to choose. But there is something I've learned from my own experience that Epictetus didn't spell out clearly. Environment matters more than willpower. You cannot rely on willpower to win forever. Willpower is a limited resource. It drains as the day goes on. But if you design your environment correctly, you won't need willpower at all. I deleted TikTok from my phone, not because I'm strong, but because I know I'm weak. I leave my phone in another room before I go to sleep. I stopped buying snacks and bringing them home, not because I have iron discipline, but because I've learned that the best battle is the one you never have to fight. Epictetus teaches us how to fight when we're under attack. But I think the wiser move is this: don't put yourself in a position to be attacked in the first place. Here is what I want you to take away from this video. We usually measure victory by things we can see: a body that changes, a bank account that grows, an achievement that gets recognized. But Epictetus spoke of a different kind of victory, the kind that happens in silence, the kind where nobody watches and nobody claps. It's the moment you feel the craving and you don't follow it. That might sound small, but think about what's actually happening. Every time you resist, that bad habit weakens just a little, and you grow stronger just a little. Not in a way you can see right away, but in a way that compounds, like interest in a bank account, except what's accumulating is your character. After 1 month, 6 months, a year, you look back and realize you are no longer the same person. Not because you did something extraordinary, but because you made the right choice in hundreds of small, invisible moments that no one else ever saw. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Both Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius understood something we so easily forget. True freedom does not come from being able to do whatever you want. True freedom comes from the ability to choose not to do the things that control you. The person who can't put their phone down is not free, even though they can pick it up anytime they want. The person who can set it down, walk away, and choose where their attention goes, that person is truly free. I'm not going to promise you that what I've said today will change your life overnight. Honestly, most videos like this one, including mine, will leave you feeling inspired for a few hours. And then, everything drifts back to the same orbit it was in before. But there is one thing I want you to try tonight. Just one thing. The next time you feel the urge to do something you know you shouldn't, don't give in and don't suppress it. Just stop, count to 10, and ask yourself one question. What would the person I want to become choose in this moment? You don't need to be perfect. You just need to make the right choice one more time than you did yesterday. And maybe the real question was never how to break a bad habit. Maybe the real question is this: who do you want to become, and is every small choice you're making today actually leading you there?